All right, good evening, everybody. It is Steve with Real Progress in Action. Tonight we're going to talk about something that I think every one of us has a personal freaking responsibility to be just a little bit better in. And that right there, my friends, is defending democratic socialism. Being able to even speak to it in a way that doesn't make all the establishment types start hearkening back to McCarthy and red baiting and somehow or another the USSR was not a democratically socialist nation in any way, shape, or form. But the bugaboos that we are dealing with today have been around for a very, very long time. And they're tried and true scare tactics that have been used since the dawn of time. In fact, I'll guarantee you, if you're honest with yourself, some of you people out there, this won't apply to. But for the vast majority of us, at one point or another, the idea of anything to do with socialism was scary as hell. It's not a matter of being woke. It's a matter of being brainwashed. It's a matter of society working in overtime to try and make this word mean something that it doesn't mean. Let me explain something to you that I think everybody should understand. Just like gender is not, either or, gender is a spectrum. The same thing can be said about politics. Politics is a spectrum. Economics is a spectrum. Authoritarian to complete and utter laissez-faire. This right here is, once again, a spectrum. Everything is a spectrum. And so when we're talking about the term democratic socialism, which is what Bernie Sanders proudly puts forward, and what FDR's New Deal was largely based on, you're not talking about real, honest-to-goodness socialism. And this is why you get so many people on the super woke left complaining that what Bernie's doing isn't nearly enough. But as you clearly see, in the real world, the United States is made up of a lot of people that have about 38/100ths of a second to understand a soundbite. And then they're moving on to the next subject. So whichever of these candidates is able to encapsulate some heartfelt fear within 38/100ths of a second is going to capture the hearts and minds of the American people. Unfortunately, the truth is never a 38/100th second answer. It really isn't. A lot of times it takes a little bit more time. And when you only have a minute, 30 seconds to answer, it's very difficult to pick and choose which Pandora's box you want to open without being able to close the deal, without being able to finalize that concept, without being able to drive the point home, without being able to get into the details, without people's eyes glazing over and rolling back inside their head. Because let's be fair, people ain't so great. People are worn out, they're tired, they're exhausted, and we're asking them to consume something that goes against every sitcom, something that goes against every single textbook that our schools use, and every news station out there. Our political parties have been complicit in advancing this fear of the word socialism, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So, what does it mean to be a socialist? Well, it means a lot of things, but the term socialism really isn't a matter of politics. Socialism is really about who owns the means of production, who owns your labor, who owns the collective good, and what role, if any, does capital play in that environment? And therein which lies the spectrum. Who owns what? And so in a capitalist environment, capitalism owns, and all the proceeds, they have full power over what they pay their people. They have full power over what they produce. They have full power over the whole shooting match. The people, the workers that are doing the incredibly hard work, they don't really have any say-so in it. Unions in this country were attempting to provide workers' rights. Unions have been watered down. They have been just absolutely decimated by rules and laws, right-to-work states, you name it, that have prevented workers from having any kind of say-so in their day-to-day life. So what does Bernie Sanders mean when he talks about democratic socialism? Bernie's not really seeking, though in some cases he is, but he's not really seeking to seize the means of production. What he's doing is trying, like FDR did, to make it so that this capitalist world we live in isn't eating its young, isn't devouring the people. He's trying to take the sting and the survival aspects out of capitalism so that people are not dependent on the business cycle, so that people are able to survive and get their healthcare needs met without the business cycle being a part of that puzzle. He's trying to look at a way of making sure that people are educated without it being a part of an economic puzzle to make money to educate you. He's trying to find ways to make sure that the people themselves are not the one bearing that burden. Why in the world should companies get the benefit of all that training, education, and development and then put the cost on the regular employee? It doesn't make sense. And so each step along the way, it's kind of like reclaiming territory long lost, as Bernie Sanders is attempting to put forward an incredibly robust suite of policy space that address the human condition, that address each of our concerns, each of our lives. It is very, very intersectional, providing for the very special needs of individual groups, but with the mindset that this is class war, that we are the 99%, the workers, up against the oligarchs and the plutocrats. He's trying to say, listen, if we spend on the people can thrive. And we will curb the big businesses' proclivity for hoarding cash, for hoarding resources, for ultimately destroying the planet without any repercussions whatsoever, and then putting survival on the little people once again. Now, this seems radical because we're so used to this idea that business should be able to do whatever the hell it wants to do. We see it with the oil companies. We see it with the medical industry, the pharmaceutical companies in particular. We see it with big ag and all the pollutants and all the steroids and all the other things that go in there to fatten their bottom line while simultaneously polluting the population and hurting us. You see this in big tobacco. You see this in big firearms. You see this in all these lobby groups out there that have outsized voices in our democracy that we, the people, could never match without a revolution, unfortunately. So what Bernie Sanders is attempting to do is take more of a Nordic approach to socialism. He's looking at democratic socialism. Democratic socialism is about making people whole. It's about providing a higher quality of life, and it's about taking the survival of our lives, our own existence, out of the hands of capital and putting it back in our hands through things like a federal job guarantee, expanding Social Security, taking away the stranglehold the military-industrial complex has on young people and putting it in a federal job guarantee and getting rid of student loans, getting rid of student debt, making university education a public right, just like housing as a public right, just like a job as a public right, just like healthcare as a public right. When you make these things rights, you eliminate the ability for Congress to suddenly swing the other way and go from this idea of austerity and reducing deficits and eliminating debt and all these other nonsensical accounting terms that regular people don't understand because they are so used to trying to balance their checkbook, they can't fathom why the federal government should spend more than it has. So there's this perfect coup that goes on by our own hands because of being ignorant of how economics works and because we don't understand what this new term democratic socialism is. It's not new at all, but what this new term means to the average person. You look at the way that socialism was taught, and the United States always came in with its flags waving, defeating socialism all around the planet. We were supposed to be celebrating that. Many of us did. Now, you see authoritarian regimes like what was in Russia, and you see very, very poorly named groups like, the National Socialists, okay, the Nazis. And they associate the word socialist there as well. It's convenient. But in reality, they were fascists, severe fascists, laying on corporatism, which you might know also as neoliberalism. So why in the world do we cling to neoliberalism? Why in the world do we struggle with the idea of having rights as people, rights to services, rights to survive? Well, because we've been ingrained to believe in the superiority of the free market. We've been led to believe that it's all about hard work and that we can get there by pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. I know you've heard this before. But this is ingrained in our society, deeply ingrained, from puritanical living, the Bible, all these things that have been a huge part of the American culture. And for all the good that some religion and some spiritual paths do, there's an incredibly outsized negative that the use of organized religion has had on the way we view our lives. There's nothing wrong with personal responsibility. We all have personal responsibility in our lives. Even if Bernie passed every one of these programs, there would still be personal responsibility there. Nothing changes in that respect. The only difference is the ebbs and flows of the business cycle would no longer make getting our teeth fixed, would no longer make getting our heart fixed, would no longer make getting breast cancer repaired something that we're terrified of. It's the same exact thing you might find if you're wondering about college. In order to get a good job in this country, you've got to have a lot of college under your belt because you're competing with people that have incredible backgrounds. They have incredible education, and it costs a lot of money. Somebody's got to pay for it, right? In the current model, we, the people, the students, take on massive private debt. That debt is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. And only in certain circumstances where they're trying to incentivize public service does any of those debts typically get wiped off. Many people from yesteryear wrongly believe that because they paid off their student debts, that no one else should get their student debts paid off. The student debt industry is absolutely debilitating our economy from serving the people. It's outrageously locking people in way beyond just behavior modification. It is literally training people to not spend anything, to literally sit there and be destitute. You went to all that college thinking you were going to have a really good life, and all you did was found out that you could get a job that many people in yesteryear would have gotten without any kind of college education. It's a racket the way it's set up today, and it's not serving us either. I don't think I need to go into too much detail about how pharmaceutical companies are doing the exact same thing. For some of you who think the ACA is somehow or another a great healthcare plan, let me explain to you. The ACA was an insurance giveaway. It was neoliberalism. Bernie Sanders is getting rid of private insurance and putting it in the public space. It's not government-run healthcare. Although the reason why we hate government-run anything is because we've underfunded it. We haven't stuck by our mandates. And these things are political game as opposed to making them rights and fully funding them so that they're effective. It doesn't take much to see that socialism today is not what we're fighting. We're fighting fascism. Fascism, which is the combination of the state and the corporation. and the corporation basically running the state. And Bernie Sanders is trying to take the power back. Excuse me. You know, I sit there and I watch Bernie on the stage. And it's very hard because you watch these other clowns and they are talking from a purely neoliberal viewpoint. And I've seen good progressives. So I want to hear what the others have to say. Like somehow or another, they're going to come up with some dazzling, important thing. And in reality, what they're doing is, on one hand, they feign like they feel your pain. They give you the feel moment. This shouldn't be. You shouldn't suffer. So in my plan, we're going to make it affordable for you to do this. But define affordable. Define affordable. Affordable is not a right. Affordable is a capitalist invention. It's a market-based solution. You hear affordable, your ears should go doot, 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 doot. Somebody's propping up capitalism. You're talking about subsidizing an industry. But what happens when Bernie Sanders goes in front of the debate stage with all of these other Democrats and he's trying to make this case? What I want to do is I want to take you through, our guy Bernie here. This guy right here stands up on stage with 7 other people. And he tries to tell you something. And the reason why he has to be repetitive, you'll never guess. It's because it hasn't sunk in. It hasn't sunk into the average person yet. Burners, we know it inside and out. But for the other people, he's still got to keep being repetitive. Because the other side, all they have to do is go, socialism. And they start freaking out. So let's go ahead and read what exactly it is that these other clowns say about Bernie's label as democratic socialism. I found this particularly interesting. Sanders brushes off concerns about democratic socialist label. Senator Bernie Sanders says he's confident Democrats can unify to defeat President Donald Trump despite the president's attempts to paint Sanders' self-avowed democratic socialist label in a negative light. Sanders opened Friday night's debate at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, saying that he viewed energizing turnout as vital to the Democratic victory in November. No matter who wins this damn thing, we're all going to stand together and defeat Donald Trump, he added. Speak for yourself, Senator. I won't vote for a neoliberal. Sanders was asked to respond to Trump's comments earlier this week to Fox News when the president said, "I think of communism when I think of Bernie." Sanders brushed off all concerns about Trump's attacks. Donald Trump lies all the time, he charged, which is a true statement. Asked if they had concerns about a top-of-the-ticket candidate with a Democratic Socialist moniker, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar and businessman Tom Steyer raised their hands. I want you to remember that. Cowards. How are they going to ever fight back against anything if this is the kind of bullshit they do? So remember who they are. Okay? Forget Steyer's bromance. Remember Klobuchar is a coward. Next, former Vice President Joe Biden warned that Donald Trump and his allies would use socialism label against Sanders and the party in a prospective general election matchup. Bernie labeled himself, "Not me," a Democratic socialist, Biden said before acknowledging his own political challenges. Neither Elizabeth Warren nor Pete Buttigieg, whatever the hell his name is, proved willing to criticize Sanders for embracing democratic socialism. Warren, a Massachusetts senator, was asked about saying previously that she is a capitalist to my bones. but she refused to make a major contrast at Friday's debate in New Hampshire, saying only, Bernie and I have been friends for a long time. That in a bag of chips? I'll give you a bag of chips. Warren said the fundamental question is how do we bring our party together, and talked about fighting government corruption, saying it is an issue we can all agree on. Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, said he wasn't interested in labels like socialism. He and Sanders went on to clash on policy rather than on ideological labels. This is the final debate before next week's first in the nation New Hampshire primary. So with that, I thought that it was kind of interesting that our world, if you will, our world here of burners and progressives, to have big, bold policies. Anytime you try and solve big, huge problems, like with a Green New Deal, it will be labeled as socialism because they have tied the idea of government spending to socialism. There's no means of production here. There's no worker co-ops here. This is not an issue of the people owning the means of production. This is merely a matter of who absorbs the risk. Is it big business? Is it the federal government that has infinite means because it's a currency issuer? Or is it you and I who live hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, hoping to God we don't get an illness? And that's the point. This is not socialism at all, folks. This is social spending, which is part of the constitutional right and absolute edict and command that our Congress spend on the public purpose, in the public's interest, for the general welfare. Not welfare like handouts. That's not what we're talking about. In fact, Bernie is trying to go away from welfare, and what he's doing here is providing everyone health care, providing everyone access to college, providing everyone with infrastructure, a job guarantee, you name it. Ending the war on drugs that was concocted as a neoliberal plot to be able to ensure that capital made money yet again through corporate socialism, where we pass a law. Somehow or another, we got to meet the needs of that law. How are we going to meet the needs of that law? Well, we're going to go ahead and pay drug companies to do drug testing. We're going to pay drug companies and law enforcement companies and private prisons, etc. And this will fatten the bottom line of all these companies, and we can get rid of all those ne'er-do-goods. All those other people over there. The super predators, right, Hillary? Right, Joe Biden? Right, Petey? All the ne'er-do-goods can go in jail. We can take away their voting rights. We can ensure the good people, the good capitalists, the taxpayers get to vote. And we'll make sure those ne'er-do-goods don't have a say-so in the way the country is. Bernie Sanders is seeking to fundamentally change society in a way that is neither socialist nor communist. It's just righting a millennia of wrongs. These things are very, very simple to say. But what Bernie Sanders says when he's on stage, when they ask how he's going to pay for it, Bernie talks about a tax here, a tax there, but the taxes, they don't add up, do they? They don't come anywhere near paying for his programs. A lot of times you'll hear him say now, well, you don't hear them talking about how they're going to pay for bombs, do you? He's right, you don't. No, what Bernie Sanders is talking about here is because the average person doesn't understand that the United States government is a currency issuer. They listen to one too many Alex Jones, Ron Paul Dennis Kucinich tapes and believe the creature from Jekyll Isle. And they don't understand that dollars are nothing more than keystrokes in a fiat currency environment, a fiat regime. And so all the affordability concerns that you and I and others have had in our past should be the one strong point that we all share in unison, that we understand that we can do great things. Now, if you don't want to do great things, that's a very different conversation we can have. But I'm talking to the good people that are progressives that want these great things. I'm talking to you. You need to know that this is possible. And you need to know whether Bernie Sanders is the one up in front or the next person that comes up. Because you don't want to give somebody that doesn't know this a chance to run the White House. You don't want to give somebody who thinks that the United States government is cash poor and has to take out a credit card from the People's Republic of China like Obama. You don't want that. That's a lie. And Bernie, when he's up on stage, is held to those kind of lies. He's got 30 seconds to answer a question that's taken me already, a good 26 minutes to talk through so far. Well, he doesn't get 26 minutes to answer a question, does he? And the thing is, I can sit there and tell you in spades how federal finance works, and it'll take me a solid 5 to 10 minutes, other than I can give you the short version, which is just when Congress authorizes spending, new money is created every single time. Wow, you didn't know that happens right now every day. It's not something that has to be implemented. It's the way it's done now. That's just never done for you and I. It's always done for bombs. It's always done for fattening up Halliburton or Lockheed Martin or Boeing. But it's never to make it so that you don't go bankrupt when you get cancer. It just isn't. So Congress authorizes spending, and voila, we have money. Why is that? Because the government is the currency issuer. The federal government is the currency issuer. So why won't Bernie Sanders say that? Because the vast majority of his followers are former Democrats. Many are libertarian-like who have been taught poor economics. God, have you ever talked to a libertarian about economics? It's scary. It's putrid. They still don't realize we're not on the gold standard anymore. They still trot out things like Milton Friedman and what if we print more money? What are we going to do? I just sat there and told you. Every time the government spends, it creates new money. Well, shit, it's just going to keep on printing money? Well, we tax money out of the economy. We don't use your tax dollars to pay for Josie's bad choices and Billy's bad choices. No. The dollar maintains its purchasing power by the tax liability that's placed on it, because then you need that dollar. You can't pay your taxes in Bitcoin. You can't pay them in chicken necks. You can't pay them in sexual favors. Hell, you can't pay them in frog legs or pork bellies. But you can pay them in U.S. dollars. Because the U.S. dollar is nothing more than a tax credit. So when you hear these debates, they're saying, how's he going to pay for it? You hear Hillary still, after all this time, playing the worst, folks, the worst of right-wing theology she is using as her means of saying that this is a pie in the sky. He's promising the moon. In reality, that money still gets spent. This is why it's not socialism. The federal government is still spending that money into the economy to provide those services. Would I love the government just to take on those services and eliminate all finance from it? You're damn right I would. But even then, you still got to have a way of provisioning the system. And that's what money is for. That's what the U.S. currency is for. That's what that unit of account is. It's like an inch, a pound, a molecule. It's a dollar. It's just a score on a scoreboard. Where do points come from in a baseball game? Keystrokes. They add them up on the board, or one of those metal placards they put up on the board. Do you ever run out of points? No. But you have to score the points. Right? That's all a dollar is. But they want you to feel like it's the scariest, most difficult thing to get a hold of, and they make it that way on purpose. That's not because it is. That's because that's neoliberalism's stranglehold on you to control you, to make it hard, so that the business leaders can pick you out of the bunch and give you pennies on the dollar for what you're worth. That way they can do away with having to give you days off, paid time off. They can make you a contractor. They can make it so you can't telework. They can make it so you don't have any of the benefits you want. And you need to be damn happy because a job's hard to come by. That's why they do it. Bernie Sanders is trying to eliminate that stranglehold they have on you. Get you a federal job guarantee where you can work the hours you want and get paid a living wage with benefits, federal benefits. And then the private sector, it has to meet or beat that. This is such a huge game changer. And that's why he's doing it. He's also included it in his Green New Deal proposal as a just transition for those that will be in fossil fuel industries that are done away with, or insurance companies that are done away with. There's a just transition. There's a way to make sure people are whole. Healthcare, whole, making you whole. Job guarantee, eliminating that unemployment space and making you whole. Expanding Social Security for those who can't or won't work. Not a UBI, because we don't want a UBI, because that truly is inflationary. Because there's no production to meet the new demand. And no automation isn't going to do it, folks. Sorry. So Bernie Sanders is giving us the vehicle and the map and the blueprint. But in 30 seconds on stage, he can't answer all these questions. There's just no way. And they're not asking him the good questions. Instead, they're asking him these dumb questions about what is it like to be a socialist? Isn't that bad? And then instead of it being asked of everyone, they all pile on Bernie. Bernie's like, it's silly. I'm just here to make your lives better. But I can't do it alone, he says. Not me, us. It requires all of us. Collective energy, collective purpose. Now, running a volunteer organization, I already know how challenging it is to get people to focus and go straight to the prize. They're like ping pong balls, jumping here, jumping there, jumping all over the place. Keeping them in line, keeping them focused, not deviating over here. Focus, nope, eyes up here. Focus, very challenging. A microcosm to what someone like Bernie Sanders has to do. Now, let me tell you, Bernie Sanders is a master organizer, and he's got a ground game second to none. So the ability to get things done never been better. Ever. It's never been better. So you and I need to understand a couple of things. We have to understand that the government can afford to do every single one of these programs, and in most cases without needing to raise taxes on us at all. Now, if you want to raise taxes, a wealth tax on the wealthy, knock yourself out, because they should not have that kind of money. Money was never intended to pool at the top like that. We should not have that champagne glass of inequality. It should not be that way. And Bernie Sanders is looking to bring about a change in that dynamic. He's looking at making sure that African Americans are not making 10 times less or have 10 times less wealth than the average American household. People like Derek Hamilton with his baby bonds proposal. People like Stephanie Kelton, who are advancing a job guarantee around the world, recently down in Australia. This is huge, folks. And it requires that you and I do the work. Our alternative media typically shy away from this. We need to get them stronger. They're failing us on that front miserably. It's not enough just to smile and have jokes about why socialists, oh, you're just a capitalist. These things, it's not good enough. You've got to know that the country can afford to do everything and that your taxes are used to drive the currency. They're not used to pay for things. You've got to know this. You must know it inherently so that you can defeat and help win souls, so to speak, for the cause, because we want to live. Climate change isn't waiting on us. We're not negotiating with physics. The world's burning up. We don't have time for that. You better learn this. You must learn the economics, the basics. The federal government can afford it all, and it doesn't wait on your taxes. It spends first, taxes later. Where does it get the money if it spends first? Think about it. Borrowing from private banks? No. The United States government spoke the Federal Reserve into existence using its own unit of account, the U.S. dollar. Look who signs on that U.S. dollar, folks. It's the Treasury. It isn't some guy named Rothschild. Horrible people say that stuff. Anti-Semitic trash. And the conspiracy has grown more legs and more energy than the good guys fighting for a New Deal, a Green New Deal, healthcare, you name it. So Bernie's view of democratic socialism, shared by millions and millions of people who go through DSA, even through the Green Party, and in the Democratic Party and the progressive side, understand inherently that this is all about making sure that we, the people, are taken care of. That life sucks just a little bit less. And that we can take care of one another. This isn't about redistributing your hard-earned tax dollars to someone else. I just debunked that. I did a Kobe Bryant tomahawk slam. MJ from the free throw line, tongue hanging out, end of the game. There is no debate. The only debate is somebody's ignorance. And that's not a debate at all. It's like whipping somebody that doesn't have the ability to fight back. They're just saying stupid shit and they don't know what they're saying. The problem is we can't wait for them necessarily to learn. We must drive this point home. But it requires all of you to know it and to get it and to not move on to other subjects and forget about it. Because when Bernie tries to advance these big causes, you must acknowledge, you see it already. The Democratic Party is trying to make it out to be pie in the sky. The Republicans will do the same thing if you didn't do your homework. Knock doors like crazy. Talk about your personal experiences. But make sure you know inherently the government can afford all this stuff so that your confidence is up and your doubt is down. And you can look people in the eye and you can smile with confidence that even the people you don't like, even the people that don't like Bernie, even the people that don't know any better will benefit. Immigrants will benefit. Veterans will benefit. The elderly will benefit. Yes, the boomers who are thinking socialism and screaming McCarthyite bullshit, they will benefit. Your children will benefit, and our grandchildren and their children and so forth will benefit. And we will have a planet that is habitable for all and for our animal population. This is why it's so important that you know what democratic socialism is and is not, and what social spending is and is not. And don't let them suck you into the, you're just a communist, you dirty commie kind of bullshit. This isn't communism. This isn't socialism. This is social democracy. This is creating rights for people. I want you to understand how vital it is that you get this, because it's not me, us. That means you've got to carry this message. That means you need to be prepared to give a reason for the hope that lies within. That means you need to be accountable. And this is your moment of personal responsibility. Here's your bootstrap moment. You wanted a bootstrap? I'm giving you one. Own the truth about economics so that you can help Bernie and help all of us at the same time. Not me, us. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progress in Action, saying let's take New Hampshire. If you ever get a chance and would like to volunteer with Real Progress in Action or Real Progressives, by all means, please sign up for it on our website or through our Facebook pages. If by some chance you enjoy podcasts, please check out our podcast. We've just released our 54th, coming up on our 55th podcast for Macro, the letter N, cheese.com, or we are on Stitcher, we're on Podbean, we're on Castbox, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, Google. Check our podcast out. It gives you all the details. This weekend, we had one that was on Empire with Ajamu Baraka. We are very, very proud of this podcast. I hope you get a chance to listen to it. Again, www.macro, the letter N, cheese.com. And also, lastly, we are two nonprofits here. Real Progressives is a 501c3, and they handle policy and they handle education. Real Progress in Action, which is what you're watching right now, is a 501c4, and we're able to activate and advocate. So if you would like to provide a tax-deductible donation, you can donate to our 501c3 Real Progressives to help out with educating people and to help out with ensuring that we are able to translate academic and high-level policy prescriptions into readable, usable text and video and audio for Jane and Joe Q voter public. And that right there, my friends, is tax deductible. Please visit us and become a monthly donor on our Patreon account, etc. And with that, I bid you a great night. Let's see Bernie get to the finish line. I'm out.